Welcome back to Inspire Digital Podcast. Today, we're doing a deep dive into something I think is really fundamental. We're exploring the ideas in the Matchstick Principle, a book by Ysh Estayo. Specifically, we're going to unpack the third principle, and that is, not every strike leads to a flame. Failure is part of the process. Just picture trying to light an actual matchstick. You scrape it, right? But it doesn't always catch first time. Sometimes it just fizzles, or the head crumbles, or, the stick just snaps in half. It's frustrating, that failed strike, but maybe essential.
Oh, absolutely essential. That simple act, that physical thing, it's such a perfect metaphor for, well, almost anything we try to achieve. If the goal is fire, a breakthrough, launching something new, mastering a skill, this principle says those failed strikes, they're not just okay, they're actually required. Yeah, failure isn't like the opposite of success in this view. It's baked into the process. It is the process almost. So this deep dive is really about understanding why. Why every misfire, every time it doesn't work, actually refines your approach, your technique. It helps you figure out the pathway to getting that flame, to achieving sustained success. It's about embracing the instructive nature of failure.
Okay, yeah, let's get into that. A good starting point seems to be tackling this big psychological barrier. The book calls it the illusion of the first try. We're just swimming in these stories, aren't we? The painter who creates a masterpiece, bam, first go. The entrepreneur, suddenly a billionaire overnight. Or that musician who just, sits down and writes a global hit in an afternoon. It looks so clean, so effortless. But believing that narrative, what's the real danger there, according to the source?
Well, the danger is it makes you stop before you even start or quit way too early. It's paralysis, really. Because if you buy into that illusion and your first try isn't perfect, you immediately think, oh, I'm just not good enough, or this idea is rubbish. You internalize it as a fundamental flaw. But the reality, behind almost every overnight success, it's often years, maybe a decade of unseen work. Behind that single shining success story, there's usually this huge, unseen pile of burnt-out matches, metaphorically speaking, of course.
Right, the stuff nobody films or writes about.
Exactly. Failed prototypes, messy first drafts that were frankly terrible, awkward versions, projects that just got completely scrapped. So when you see failure through that lens, it stops being this interruption or deviation from the plan. It becomes the plan. It's the path itself. Success is just that moment when, after enough tries, enough learning, ignition finally happens.
That shift in thinking is huge. Moving from scarcity, maybe, to abundance, which brings us neatly to this idea of the Matchbox Effect. Yeah, try this thought experiment. Imagine you have just one match left, your very last one. How would you strike it? You'd probably hesitate, right? Overthink every tiny movement, grip it too tight, maybe snap it, or strike too softly, afraid to waste the head. That pressure, that fear from having only one chance, it almost guarantees you'll mess it up.
It really does. And that highlights the power of having the whole matchbox. Suddenly you've got, say, 100 matches. What happens? The pressure just evaporates. Poof, gone. Your whole mindset shifts. You're not aiming for perfection on that single strike anymore. You're experimenting. You're learning.
So it's the volume that gives you permission to fail, essentially.
Exactly. You strike with more confidence, maybe even a bit of boldness, because you expect to learn, not necessarily to succeed instantly. You're free to fiddle with the variables. Try a different angle, a bit more speed, less pressure. Use a different part of the striking surface. Each strike gives you data. You figure out what works, what doesn't. That freedom, that psychological space created by having plenty of attempts, that's what unlocks progress.
So it's less about innate talent and more about just the sheer volume of attempts, the effort.
Precisely. I mean, talent helps, sure, but the real difference often between an amateur and a pro isn't some magical gift. It's that the pros have simply been through more matches. They've allowed themselves far more misfires. They haven't let the failure stop them. There's a key metric in the principle, a single failure. That's just, well, it's an anecdote. Maybe disappointing for a moment, but 1,000 failures. Now that's experience. That's data you can actually use. That's mastery building.
Okay, that reframing it's crucial. Which leads us to how we perceive the outcome of a strike. The book calls it the myth of the wasted match. You look at that matchstick, the one where the head just crumbled off or it's scraped without lighting. It seems useless, right? The total waste of effort. But what does it really signify?
Well, we need to push back hard against that idea of wasted, that spent match, the one that didn't light. It's actually proof that you tried, proof you took action, you engaged with the process. The only truly wasted match, according to this principle, is the one that just sits there in the box, pristine, untouched, never even struck.
Because it never even had the potential to create fire. And that links straight to the trap of inaction, doesn't it? So many people get stuck there, waiting for the perfect moment, or for someone else's approval, or for some kind of guarantee that it'll work before they even try.
Yeah, they miss the point that the strike itself is what leads to success eventually. You don't wait for guaranteed success before you strike. You strike to find success.
So the paralysis comes from how you label the attempt.
I think so, yeah. If you see every strike as just a simple pass-fail test on you, you'll be terrified to strike unless you already know the outcome, which is impossible, usually. But if you see the strike as like a mini-experiment, testing variables, then a lack of fire isn't failure, it's just data, necessary data.
Okay, but let me push back a little here. If we have unlimited matches, metaphorically speaking, isn't there a risk of just flailing? Repeating the same mistake endlessly. Analysis paralysis. How do you make sure that volume translates into learning, not just, wasted motion?
That's the key distinction, isn't it? It's about embracing the misfire intelligently. The pro doesn't just strike again and again blindly. They adjust again and again, based on the feedback from the last strike. See, when a strike fails, people tend to react in one of two ways, fundamentally. The first way, the more common, perhaps amateur response, is to see the failed strike as proof of some negative belief they already held. They think, see, I knew it wouldn't work, or I'm just not cut out for this. And what do? They stop. The misfire becomes their excuse to quit.
Okay, so that's reaction one. Confirmation bias leads to quitting. What's the second reaction, the productive one?
The second reaction, the professional mindset, is to see that failed strike purely as feedback. Information, data. There's no self-blame involved, or very little. It's about empirical analysis. They think, okay, interesting. That angle combined with that pressure didn't work. Maybe I need more pressure, or a different part of the box. The misfire isn't failure. It's high-quality intel for the next attempt. They're not just trying to light one match. They're trying to figure out the system of lighting matches under these conditions.
That really nails the mindset difference. Pros expect misfires and learn. Amateurs expect smooth sailing and get derailed by the first bump. And this ties directly into that really common problem. Just quitting too soon. We see it everywhere. People abandon a new business because it doesn't explode in month one, or they shelve a book manuscript because the first draft isn't perfect, giving up on learning guitar because the first few weeks are hard.
Absolutely. And when you look at the people we admire, successful writers, artists, entrepreneurs, athletes, their success almost never comes from some perfect first strike. Never. It comes from their sheer relentlessness, their willingness to keep applying that strike and adjust cycle, long, long after most people would have thrown the matchbox away and decided it was impossible.
So the core message here, the really empowering part, is that failure is just feedback. It's data. It's actually a step forward if you use it right. It's definitely not a stop sign. You don't need the perfect strike. You just need to keep striking, keep learning, keep adjusting.
And here's the really profound part, the context that makes this whole idea truly powerful. In the real world, a physical box of matches runs out right. But your ideas, your projects, your career growth, your creativity, that matchbox is effectively bottomless. You have unlimited matches. The potential for fire, for success, isn't reserved for the lucky few who get it right instantly. It belongs to anyone who refuses to stop striking, who refuses to stop learning from the misfires. The only thing that's actually limited is your own willingness to pick up another match and try again, maybe slightly differently this time.
Wow, that's a really powerful way to frame it. Unlimited matches. So this deep dive into the Matchstick Principle, it really hammers home that value isn't in avoiding failure at all costs. It's actually in maximizing the number of attempts, the volume of effort, and critically extracting the learning from every single strike, whether it lights up or not.
So maybe a final thought for everyone listening. Given that you essentially have unlimited chances, what's one match you're holding right now? That project, that skill, that conversation maybe that you've been a bit afraid to strike because you fear the misfire. And thinking about this principle, what one small adjustment based on feedback, not perfection, could you make to actually strike it? Maybe even today.
That's a great question to reflect on. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into Ysh Estayo's The Matchstick Principle. If this has sparked something for you, you can find his latest books. They're available now on Amazon. And if you're looking for business consulting, maybe outsourcing solutions or expertise in artificial intelligence, you can actually contact Ysh Estayo for guidance on that too. Also, if you need help with, say, book writing or publishing, feel free to reach out. Until next time, keep diving deep.